Hey there, this is Alexis Knight. Welcome to True Crime, the Court of Public Opinion. I'm your host, guiding you through cases that have moved through the courts and reached a conclusion but left the public divided. These are not your typical cut and dried cases, guys. These are the ones where the facts may be clear, but the truth, well, that's another story. Now imagine this. You are sitting in a luxurious mansion overlooking the ocean in sunny Coronado, California. It's a serene and peaceful place, a historical home full of grandeur. But what should be a peaceful setting becomes the scene of a tragic mystery. A woman is found dead, hanging from a second-floor balcony, naked. Her hands and feet are bound, and a cryptic message scrawled nearby. Is this an open and shut case of suicide? Or is this something far more sinister? That woman was Rebecca Zahau, and her death is still shrouded in mystery today. What happened inside that mansion in July of 2011 has left people asking one crucial question. Was this a case of guilt-filled suicide after a tragic accident involving a child, or was Rebecca murdered in a deliberate cover-up? What role did influence, whether emotional or something far more powerful, play in the events leading to her death? In this episode, we're going to dive deep into this case. It's very controversial. The authorities may have ruled Rebecca Zahau's death as a suicide, but many questions still remain. With conflicting evidence, powerful figures, and a tangled web of secrets, we'll be breaking down every detail. Was justice truly served, or is this yet another case where influence, whether psychological or societal, clouded the truth? By the end of this episode, you are going to have the chance to weigh the evidence for yourself. Stick with me because this case will change everything you thought you knew about justice, influence, and the power of wealth. Now let's really get into the heart of this mystery. Rebecca Zahau was only 32 years old. She's in a relationship with Jonah Sheknai, the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company. This is a man of immense wealth and influence. The couple had been staying at Jonah's historic Spreckles mansion. This is in Coronado, California, along with Jonah's 6-year-old son, Max, and his brother, Adam. It was July of 2011. This is a summer that would end in real tragedy. 2 days before Rebecca's death, Max Sheknai was involved in a horrifying accident inside the mansion. He fell from the second floor and was gravely injured while under Rebecca's supervision. Jonah's son was rushed to the hospital, and Rebecca reportedly felt an overwhelming sense of guilt as she believed she was responsible for the child's fall. But just 2 days after, Rebecca herself was found dead, naked, hanging from the balcony of the mansion. With her hands and feet tied, a cryptic message was found painted on the door of the room. She saved him. Can you save her? That was the message. And from the beginning, the circumstances surrounding her death seemed bizarre. Despite this, investigators quickly ruled it a suicide, suggesting that Rebecca had been overcome with guilt over Max's accident, and she took her own life. But this is where things get complicated. Rebecca's family and many others do not believe it was a suicide. The condition of her body raised immediate questions. How could someone bind their own hands and feet in such intricate knots? And if you're going to kill yourself by hanging, why bother? So you won't save yourself? How could she have hung herself in this position, though, with her hands tied, without any sign of struggle or hesitation marks on her wrists? And what about the message left in black paint? Was it a suicide note? Maybe something more sinister. To add another layer to this story, it was Jonah's brother, Adam Sheknai, who found Rebecca's body. Adam had been staying in a guest house on the property, and was the one who ended up calling 911. His behavior after the discovery was odd, to say the least. He reportedly cut Rebecca down from the balcony before authorities arrived, potentially contaminating the scene, of course, and why touch the body. Then there were the inconsistencies in Adam's statements about what he had seen and done that night. These details raised several questions. Could Rebecca Zahau have tied those knots herself? Or did someone else? Why would someone commit suicide in such a dramatic and staged way? Naked. And if it wasn't suicide, who would have had the motive to kill her? And then why? Rebecca's family has always maintained that she was murdered and that the investigation was rushed due to Jonah Shacknai's wealth and influence. The Shacknai family had deep connections, and some believe these connections influenced the speed of the investigation and that ruling of suicide. Could there have been pressure on the authorities to close the case quickly and quietly? This case brings up a bigger question about the influence of power. How much does wealth and status shape the outcome of criminal investigations? We want to think it doesn't. Does it? Could someone have gotten away with murder because of who they knew? Or was this a tragic case of guilt and emotional torment? It drove Rebecca to her death. And this is where the court of public opinion comes in. Was Rebecca Zahau a victim of her own guilt and psychological distress? Or was she influenced, maybe threatened by those around her to take her life? And if it wasn't suicide, was the investigation influenced by external pressures? Let's walk through the events leading up to Rebecca Zahau's death, along with the evidence and key details that have kept this case alive in the public's mind for years. Okay, so it all begins July 11th in 2011, when 6-year-old Max Shacknai, Jonah's son, suffered a severe accident while under Rebecca's care. According to reports, Max was playing on the second floor of the mansion when something went horribly wrong. Max was then found unconscious at the base of the stairs with a shattered chandelier nearby, indicating he had fallen from a significant height. He sustained life-threatening injuries, including trauma to his spinal cord and his brain. The medical reports suggested that Max's injuries were consistent with a fall. But the exact sequence of events that led to his accident remains unclear. At the time of the fall, Rebecca was the only adult person in the home. She immediately called Jonah, who rushed back from the gym, and Max was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Rebecca understandably was devastated by the accident. Close friends and family members later reported that she felt an overwhelming sense of guilt. Despite assurances that Max's injuries were not her fault, Rebecca seemed to internalize the blame, feeling that she could have maybe been able to prevent the tragedy. So over the next 2 days, Rebecca's emotional state reportedly deteriorated. She stayed by Jonah's side at the hospital, supporting him as doctors delivered the grim news that Max was not likely to survive. This emotional burden weighed heavily on her, and some believe it may have contributed to her decision to take her own life. But was guilt enough here to explain what happened next? Everything that happened next? So on the evening of July 12th, Rebecca returned to the mansion while Jonah remained at the hospital with his son. Jonah's brother Adam arrived in Coronado that night, staying in the guest house on the property to help support his brother through this crisis. Rebecca spent part of the evening on the phone with family and friends. According to her sister, Mary, Rebecca seemed upset, but she wasn't suicidal. In fact, she was making plans for the following day, including picking up Max's younger brother, who was returning from a visit with his mother. Another phone call revealed that Rebecca had been looking up inspirational Bible verses, which her sister found odd given the situation. Still, there was no clear indication that Rebecca was contemplating taking her own life. At around 1 a.m., Jonah reportedly sent a final text message to Rebecca. updating her on Max's condition. And that would be the last communication anyone had with her before her death. At around 6:45 a.m., Adam claimed he discovered Rebecca's lifeless body hanging from a second-floor balcony outside the bedroom where she had been staying. She was naked, her wrists bound behind her back, her ankles tied together, and a long red rope was tied around her neck. The other end of the rope was attached to a bedpost inside the room. There was also a t-shirt wrapped tightly around her neck, suggesting possible strangulation even before the hanging. This scene was so shocking. Shocking to say the least. It's the only word I can think of. Rebecca's body hung in almost a staged manner, and the conditions of the ropes and the bindings seemed highly unusual for a suicide. Adam immediately called 911, informing the operator that he was performing CPR. He told the dispatcher that Rebecca had taken her own life, but many have questioned how he could have reached that conclusion so quickly. When law enforcement arrived, they found a cryptic message painted in black on the door of the bedroom where Rebecca had stayed. And again it said, "She saved him. Can you save her?" This message has puzzled investigators and the public alike. Who wrote it? What does it mean? Was it a final message from Rebecca? Was it a taunt from somebody else? The San Diego Medical Examiner's Office conducted a full autopsy on Rebecca Zahau's body. Their findings concluded that she had died by suicide. According to the report, the cause of death was asphyxia due to hanging. There were no signs of a violent struggle, and the injuries on her body, mainly bruises on her head and torso, were consistent with either a fall or an impact during the hanging. However, certain details from the autopsy raised eyebrows. For example, the report noted tape residue on Rebecca's legs, though no tape was found at the scene. Additionally, the intricate bindings on her wrists and ankles led to speculation about how someone could tie themselves up so thoroughly and still manage to hang themselves. Experts pointed out that while it's technically impossible to tie your own hands and feet in this way, it's extremely rare in suicide cases anyway. The autopsy also revealed no traces of drugs or alcohol in Rebecca's system, ruling out the possibility that she had been intoxicated or incapacitated before her death. Despite these findings, Rebecca's family and many in the public believed that the evidence pointed toward foul play. Another point of contention was the marks found on Rebecca's head and back. While the medical examiner suggested these were caused by her fall, others argued they were signs of a struggle. Could she have been knocked unconscious before being hung? And if so, would that imply someone else was involved in her death? Possibly. Adam, Jonah's brother, was the last person to see Rebecca alive. He was the one who found her body. Naturally, this placed him under a great deal of suspicion. Adam claimed that he had spent the night in the guest house and only discovered Rebecca's body the next morning when he went to check on her. But Adam's behavior in the aftermath raised questions. First, he admitted to cutting Rebecca down from the balcony before police arrived. Some experts argue that this could have contaminated very crucial evidence at the scene, and others have questioned why he would cut her down if she was clearly dead. Furthermore, Adam's 911 call, which was later released to the public, it's been criticized for its calm, almost detached tone, given the gruesome nature of the discovery. And here is that 911 call for you. I cut out some of the dead time as he's running to try to find the house address, but this is his interactions with 911. This is the brother Adam calling because he found the victim and he's reporting it. So take a listen here, and then we have more to discuss.
On Ocean Boulevard across the hotel, same place that you just came with the case yesterday.
Okay, sir, what is the address?
I'm not sure how. 1928 something. I'm not sure. Let me call you back.
Okay, sir, is he still alive?
I don't know.
Okay.
No. It came here yesterday to pick up a little boy.
Okay, sir, I wasn't working yesterday. I don't know what you're talking
Check the
about.
records.
Sir, I checked all of the records yesterday. I can't find anything on Ocean Boulevard. Can you tell me what the address is?
I'm looking. Well, it's Parsining Important for the hotel.
Okay, I understand that. I just need the exact address. I can't help you until I have the address.
1043 Ocean Boulevard.
1043 Ocean? Okay,
Yeah.
is he still alive?
I don't think so.
Okay, let me get the fire department. Sure, hang on. Let me get the fire department on the phone to help you, okay? Hang on for a minute. With the transfer, go ahead, sir.
Golly, it's hungry.
What?
1043 Ocean Boulevard.
43 Ocean Boulevard? What's wrong?
You found yourself, man. I woke up. I said about 30.
Okay. Where was the police officer?
Last night.
Okay. You might have.
Okay, I'm pressing steps right now.
Okay, hold on.
Look at it. Look at 30. Not
What's your name?
I'm Jack now.
Okay. Now, clear away. What's your cell phone number? 901 45.
901 45.
Okay, listen to me. Help is coming right now, okay? You're on the way? Yes, ma'am. And you guys been with her? Did you put her down?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Wait.
In 2018, a civil trial found Adam responsible for Rebecca's wrongful death. The injury awarded her family $5 million in damages. While this civil case didn't carry the weight of a criminal conviction, it's reignited public debate over whether Adam had played a direct role in Rebecca's death. The family believed that Adam had either murdered Rebecca or played a part in covering up her murder. One of the most perplexing elements of this case is the message painted in black on the bedroom door. She saved him, can you save her? Who wrote this message, and what does it mean? Was it Rebecca's final act before taking her life, or was it a message left by her killer to confuse investigators? Handwriting experts were brought in to analyze the writing, but their findings were inconclusive. Some believed that the handwriting matched Rebecca's, while others pointed out key differences, adding to the mystery. The paint used to write the message was found on Rebecca's hands, leading to some speculating that she had written it herself. But why would someone write such a cryptic message and almost theatrical note before committing a very dramatic suicide? A lot went into this, and again, she was naked. At the heart of this case is the influence of wealth and power, because then there's that. Jonah was a highly influential figure in the business world with connections that extended far beyond his immediate circle. His company, Medicus Pharmaceutical, had made him a wealthy and well-known figure, and his presence in both business and political circles was undeniable. Rebecca's family has long maintained that Jonah's wealth and influence may have played a role in how the investigation was handled. They believe that the authorities were too quick to rule her death a suicide, possibly because of pressure to avoid scandal. Did Jonah's status and connections influence the outcome of the investigation? Was there an unspoken push to close the case quickly and quietly? These questions have only fueled the ongoing debate over Rebecca's death. Was she truly a victim of suicide here? Now, we've walked through the timeline of events and the evidence, so let's take a closer look at the two competing theories in this case. Was Rebecca Zahau's death a suicide driven by guilt, or was she a victim of a calculated murder? The arguments on both sides are compelling, and they've kept people debating this case for over a decade. If you haven't heard about it, you are going to be thinking about this case. The official ruling from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department is that Rebecca Zahau died by suicide. Investigators believe that Rebecca, overwhelmed with guilt and emotional distress over Max's incident, made the decision to take her own life in a very dramatic and unusual manner. According to this theory, Rebecca felt personally responsible for Max's injuries. Friends and family described her as being deeply affected by the accident, and while she didn't express suicidal thoughts explicitly, some argue that her emotional state could have deteriorated very quickly. The events of these 2 days, watching Max's condition worsen, being alone in the mansion, and the immense pressure of dealing with the fallout may have driven her to a breaking point. Investigators pointed to the fact that Rebecca had a history of depression. While she hadn't exhibited signs of suicidal behavior in recent years, some argue that the trauma of the accident may have reignited those feelings. The suicide theory is further supported by the lack of defensive wounds on her body. There were no signs of a struggle, and the bruises and marks found on Rebecca were deemed consistent with a fall and hanging. The autopsy report, which concluded that Rebecca died by asphyxiation due to hanging, is the cornerstone of the suicide argument. The marks on her neck, the positioning of the rope, and the lack of significant external trauma all align with what you would expect in a hanging. Additionally, the investigators found traces of that paint on Rebecca's hands, suggesting she may have written the cryptic message on the door herself. One of the most compelling arguments in favor of suicide is the apparent absence of any signs of forced entry or struggle. There was no evidence that anyone else entered that mansion, or that Rebecca was forcibly subdued. The knots binding her wrists and ankles, while they were unusual, they were determined by some experts, to be possible for someone to tie on themselves, especially if they were familiar with knot tying techniques. For those who supported the suicide theory, they point to Rebecca's relationship with Jonah. By all accounts, she loved him deeply, and she may have felt an overwhelming sense of guilt for Max's accident. Some suggest that this guilt, combined with the emotional strain of watching Max's condition worsen, led Rebecca to the decision that she could no longer live with these consequences. The dramatic nature of her death would be seen as an expression of her internal torment, played out in a way that ensured everyone would know how deeply she felt. But for many, this explanation doesn't quite add up. On the other side of this argument, Rebecca Zahau's family and supporters have long argued that she was murdered. They believe that the investigation was rushed and that crucial evidence was overlooked or dismissed too quickly. Their theory suggests that Rebecca was killed, possibly to silence her as a retribution for Max's accident, and that her death was staged to look like a suicide. The most glaring inconsistency, according to the murder theory, is the condition of Rebecca's body. How could she have tied her own hands and feet in such intricate knots and then hung herself from a balcony? There are several forensic experts that have weighed in on this, with many arguing that the bindings would have been extremely difficult, if not impossible, for someone to tie on themselves. They believe that the bindings point to the involvement of another person, someone who bound Rebecca and then staged the scene to make it look like a suicide. Another key point raised by those who believe in the murder theory is the cryptic message on the door. She saved him. Can you save her? Rebecca's family has argued that this message doesn't sound like something she would even write, and it's written in a style that's inconsistent with her normal handwriting. Handwriting experts have been divided on whether the message was written by Rebecca or somebody else, but the ambiguity only fuels the belief that it was part of a staged scene. Why can't we tell? Then there's Adam, the brother. Adam was the last person to see Rebecca alive and the one who found her body. He was staying in the guest house the night of Rebecca's death. And while he has consistently denied any involvement, his actions after discovering her body raised suspicion that cutting her down from the balcony before the police arrived, for example, that's been criticized by those who believe it may have been tampering with crucial evidence. Adam's demeanor during the call, where he seemed relatively calm when he called the police, that's also been scrutinized. In 2018, the civil trial found Adam liable for Rebecca Zahau's death. The jury concluded that Adam had, in some way, contributed to Rebecca's death. And that's how the family was awarded the $5 million in damages. Now, while this was a civil trial, it wasn't a criminal conviction, it did give credence to the idea that Adam might have been involved. Rebecca's family believes that Adam and possibly others were responsible for her death, and that the staged suicide was part of an attempt to cover up the crime. One possible motive suggested by supporters of the murder theory is retribution for Max's accident, like I said. Could someone have blamed Rebecca for Max's fall and then decided to take matters into their own hands? Or could Rebecca have been planning to reveal information about what really happened to Max, and then maybe someone wanted to silence her before she could speak out? And then there's also the question of Jonah's wealth and influence. Rebecca's family has long suspected that Jonah's connections may have played a role in how quickly the investigators wrapped everything up. Was there pressure to avoid a scandal? Did Jonah's status in the community influence the decision to rule Rebecca's death a suicide, even though the evidence suggested otherwise? Both sides of the argument are compelling, and that's exactly why this case has remained so divisive. Because on one hand, the evidence of suicide is strong. There were no signs of forced entry, no clear indication of a struggle, and the autopsy report supports the idea that Rebecca died by hanging. And on the other hand, the unusual circumstances of her death, the cryptic message, the intricate knots, and Adam's proximity to the scene all point to the possibility of foul play. This case challenges us, like all cases in this podcast. This one challenges us to consider how much influence, wealth, power, and personal relationships can have on an investigation. Was the suicide ruling truly the result of an impartial investigation here, or were there other forces at work that influenced the outcome? As we move forward here, it's important to remember that this is more than a mystery. It's a tragedy. Rebecca's family has spent years searching for answers, convinced that their daughter, their sister, their friend did not die by her own hand. The question now becomes, was justice served, or was this a cover-up hiding a darker truth? While the official ruling was suicide, the public is divided. From the very beginning, the media played a significant role in shaping public perception of her death. Headlines across major news outlets sensationalized the case, like they always do in big cases like this, ones drawing attention. They focused more on the salacious aspects: a naked woman with a wealthy boyfriend and a tragic accident involving a child. Then, of course, you have a mansion and a dark secret. This sounds like a movie. The case had all the elements of a true crime drama, and the media coverage reflected that. They ran with it. But with that sensational coverage came polarization. Early reports highlighted the unusual nature of Rebecca's death, with many questioning how it could be a suicide given the strange conditions. The message painted on the door, the bindings, the involvement of Adam. The details captivated the public, grabbed their attention, and led to a surge of conspiracy theories. Blogs, forums, online discussions, everything erupted with amateur sleuths speculating on what really happened inside the Spreckels mansion. The media's focus on Jonah Schucknai's wealth and influence only added to the controversy. Some outlets portrayed Jonah as a grieving father and boyfriend, just devastated by the loss of his son and now his partner. Others hinted at the idea that his status might have swayed the investigation. So in 2018, the civil trial brought the case back into the public spotlight. Everyone had been talking about it. How was this going to play out? While the criminal investigation had concluded years earlier, the wrongful death lawsuit filed by Rebecca's family reignited public interest. During the trial, new details came out and expert testimony challenged the initial findings. The jury ultimately found Adam responsible for Rebecca's death and then awarded the family the $5 million. For many, this was vindication. But for others, it didn't change much. The burden of proof, still in a civil case, is lower than a criminal trial, and some argued that the ruling didn't definitively prove that Adam did anything, certainly not guilty of murder. So the trial's outcome reinforced the idea that Rebecca's case deserved more scrutiny. Was the investigation thorough enough? Now let's talk about all the wealth and power and how that comes into play when we're dealing with justice. Does it? Because one of the most enduring controversies surrounding this case is the role of wealth and power. And what role may it have played in this investigation? Jonah was extremely wealthy. He was an influential man, the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company, and well-connected in both business and political circles. His prominence led to speculation that law enforcement may have felt pressured to handle this case delicately or close it quickly to avoid negative press. Rebecca's family has consistently argued that the investigation was influenced by Jonah's status, and they believed that if Rebecca hadn't been involved with such a powerful man, this case might have been investigated more thoroughly, and her death might have been ruled a homicide. The fact that authorities ruled her death a suicide just days after it happened, despite the bizarre circumstances, raised suspicions. We've seen circumstances come in and challenge suicide theory multiple times, but it didn't seem to do that here. Could Jonah's connections have influenced that? This idea that wealth and influence can affect the course of justice, this is not new, but it's very poignant in this case. Could this be another example of a case where the truth was obscured to protect the interests of someone with deep pockets? Well, more than a decade after Rebecca's death, public opinion remains divided as ever. Some people believe that Rebecca was a victim of her own guilt, driven to suicide by the emotional toll of Max's accident. They see her as a tragic figure who couldn't bear the weight of responsibility, and they accept the official ruling as the tragic conclusion to a heart-wrenching story. But others, they see Rebecca as a victim of foul play, either directly murdered or coerced into taking her own life. They believe that the truth about her death has been buried under layers of influence, secrecy, and power, and that justice has not yet been served. To them, the case remains a haunting reminder of how difficult it can be to get the truth when powerful forces are at play. The legacy of this case is that it became a symbol of the blurred lines between justice and influence. The strange circumstances surrounding Rebecca Zahau's death, combined with the involvement of a wealthy and powerful family, have left many questioning whether the full truth will ever come into light. It's a case that forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about how much power and money can shape the course of an investigation, and whether justice is truly blind. So where does that leave us? After examining all the facts, the evidence, and the arguments from both sides, we're left with a case that refuses to offer answers. The death of Rebecca Zahau has divided public opinion and stirred controversy for years, and for good reason. There are compelling arguments to both sides, those who believe Rebecca took her own life and those who insist she was murdered. As we wrap up here, I want to leave you with these questions. What do you believe? Was Rebecca driven to suicide by guilt and emotional distress? Or was she a victim of murder, with her death carefully staged to hide the truth? Could both theories hold some truth? Was she coerced into taking her own life by outside pressures? Or did someone else pull the strings completely? This is where the court of public opinion steps in, and that's where you come in. After everything we've discussed, it's up to you to decide. Was justice truly served in the case of Rebecca Zahau? Or is there more to the story that we may never fully uncover? One thing is certain, this case has left an indelible mark, not just on those who knew and loved Rebecca, but on everyone who followed it. The questions surrounding her death will continue to haunt the public, and the search for answers may never be fully satisfied. Thank you for joining me today on True Crime, the Court of Public Opinion. Stay safe out there, guys. Stay curious. Until next time, this is Alexis Knight.